This is John Carpenter's first ever film that he directed, and he made this film with Dan O'Bannon, who was the guy who wrote and came up with the idea for Alien. So he's got quite a sci-fi pedigree, and this is before that. I believe this was some kind of like almost student film, like expanded to a somewhat bigger budget. I might be completely wrong on that. It's a spaced out epic of strange love proportions, Dark Star. So this is a sci-fi comedy, apparently, and this was released in 1974, and actually stars Dan O'Bannon. So I'll be intrigued to see that, because I mainly know Dan O'Bannon from the making of Alien documentaries when he was an old man. So to see him younger would be interesting. I just noticed there's like a print on the back of the disc that covers some of the specifications saying disc made in Mexico. If you could even see that on camera, especially not with the lighting. Interesting stuff. I actually bought this from Karate Popcorn. In fact, I bought a few of these Carpenter films from Karate Popcorn, fellow YouTuber. Shout out to you. Let's get started. I'm excited. It's far too late. But finally, The Rock has come. Finally, the John Carpenter 24-hour movie marathon begins.
Ship's computer to all personnel. This is an emergency override. All systems must stand by.
Alright, here we go. Beginning of the first film, Dark Star from 1974, as I talk over the extremely loud menu. Cheers. Oh, that's lovely. That's really good.
Attention. Attention.
That's warming me up inside, which is really nice. So, awesome, let's get started. Interestingly enough, we actually open this with a written intro by Dan O'Bannon. So, let's actually read this. This movie is a comedy. I wanted to be sure and clarify that right up front, because when the film was first released to the paying public, they didn't seem to realize it was supposed to be funny. That was back in February of 1975, and on opening night, John Carpenter and I went around to a few of the 40 theaters it was saturation booked into to see how people liked our movie. It was our very first feature film, and we were both wound up tighter than a drum, so we introduced ourselves to the theater manager and said we'd like to take a peek inside to judge the audience reaction. In the sourest tone of voice imaginable, he said, "What audience?" There were 5 people in the house, and they looked like they were attending a funeral. We were traumatized, and it took me years to regain my sense of humor. My second film, Alien, was basically Dark Star made scary. I figured if I can't make them laugh, maybe I can make them scream. The rest is history. Dark Star began as a student film, I knew it, at USC and grew out of proportion. Even so, it was cheap. The ultimate cost was $55,000, and where that came from, I still don't know. It took 3.5 years to make, starting in July 1970, and it was a labor of love. We prepared this so-called signature edition because all of the existing cassettes that I've seen are of such poor quality they make me writhe with shame. They look nauseating. They've been through so many generations they could join the DAR. I do not get that reference. I can't stand to have our picture seen like that, so the print you're about to see is pretty close to the original quality, the way we wanted you to see it. 2 trivia questions. Number 1, see if you can tell which character is played by 4 different actors. Number 2, see if you can tell which actor in which scene is under the influence of LSD. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dark Star. You are under no obligation to laugh unless I'm present in the room. That's really cool. I like that. I don't know whether it was worth me reading all that out, but I quite enjoyed doing it in that form. And yeah, so there we go. That was the written introduction. And once again, this feels like the opposite of Return of the King. This marathon has had like 17 different beginnings, but I assure you, this is now the beginning of the movie and the beginning of the marathon. In full, in proper. Into Dark Star, I go. Alright, so I'm 6 minutes into Dark Star, and that Jägermeister is really swelling in my chest right now. The oven's hot enough to put the pizza in, so I'm taking a quick break. But the character of Pinback, played by Dan O'Bannon, the writer, also the guy who wrote Alien, at least the first draft of Alien, the original idea of Alien, and I don't know how anyone would have thought this isn't a comedy when Pinback is communicating to bomb number 19 on the ship and says, "Oh, you wouldn't happen to know what time you're supposed to go off, would you?" And the bomb's like, "Oh yes, I'm scheduled to go off in 6 minutes and 30 seconds." Like, I mean, it's not hilarious, but it quite tickled me, and I don't know how anyone would take that at face value. I just thought that was such a fun. I wouldn't have to know what time you're going to go off, would you? So I think I'm going to enjoy the humor of this, but so far, I mean, it's very difficult to say. But you know, it started with like a section like that was shot on video, I think, and like in square frame, and I thought, oh, is it all going to look like video-y? But then the film's expanded to widescreen, and it's shot on film, so it looks nice in that respect. And I'm one of those weirdos who really likes the way that film looks. So yeah, pizza in the oven, on with the film. I probably won't talk anymore until the end of the film. I need to keep in mind how long I ramble about these things and not to just have this thing drag out forever. But I just wanted to comment on that in the moment while it was fresh. Well, I'll be a son of a bitch. Okay, the time is currently midnight. It's actually bang on midnight. Oh boy, okay. Dark Star then. Probably one of the worst films I think I've ever seen. Just pretty awful from start to finish. I really didn't like it at all, actually. Just terrible. So, you know, pretty bad start to completing Carpenter, really, because it was I actually really liked it. I'm sorry. It's really late, and I tried to make that like a joke, and it just didn't seem to work out very well. But I'll leave it in like I always do. Dark Star, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It's one of those films where you've got to consider the fact that it is a first film, that it is in essence a student film, and a low budget film, an independent film, and so the special effects, you know, being a science fiction film, are not going to be all that great, and everything else that goes along with that. But I think that amidst its flaws, of which there are numerous and many, there's a cool heart to this film in the sense that you have a bunch of guys who made a movie, you know? And like I said earlier in that clip before, I really found it funny how the bombs were kind of sentient beings who they were kind of having conversations with. And, you know, couldn't let us know when you're about to explode, would you? And then later, I tell you, the menu screen is really distracting me. I'm going to turn the TV off for a second. So, yeah, the humor of that, of the sentient bombs, was interesting to me. The rest of the humor didn't quite play as well for me. I didn't find it as funny as that. You know, I thought, oh, this is going to be quite a funny film. The humor kind of dipped and, you know, poked up a little bit, but not much. The thing that really made me laugh was the ending. You know how I said earlier, because I've got like 22 and a half hours on my memory card right now, I could have just recorded myself watching all these films in case there was any good reactions. I wish I'd done that because I laughed so much at the end. There is a ridiculous joke at the end of this film I thought was hilarious. And it was brilliant. Like, great way to end the film. I think the film really drags in the middle, like really drags. There's a whole sequence where Dan O'Bannon's character, is it Pinback, I think? He is going to feed the alien they have on board, which is probably one of the worst looking things you'll ever see. It's just an inflatable beach ball painted kind of green or brown or something. I'm partially colorblind, but it was painted a vaguely alien color. And it's just, and then he's like chasing it around and getting into a fight with it. There's some slapstick, and then he chases it throughout the ship, and it goes on and on. There's an elevator sequence, which actually visually I thought was really well done, but it gets a bit laborious at times. I found a lot of humor towards the end where the shipmate who was up in the observation deck for most of the film and kind of keeps to himself. He's trying to fix this ship because all these problems are happening, and there's a malfunctioning laser on the ship called Dark Star, and he's like trying to communicate with them, and they couldn't care less, and so they ignore him even though he has vital information to get. So I found that funny how they probably could have saved themselves if they weren't being so narrow-minded and kind of just in their own zone, which it kind of goes into where they've been out in space for 20 years. The beginning sets up very well that the government aren't really, giving them a high priority and stuff. So they're kind of just out there, and their mission is to just destroy and bomb these planets that are going to collide with stars anyway. I like the stuff where they're talking about, a possibility of finding life, and there's a really good scene in the observation deck where the two characters are talking about what's it called, the Phoenix asteroid, and that scene was really well done to me, and kind of funny as well actually, when the one character, Doolittle, is talking about how he just misses surfing back home in Malibu, and like the the joke in that scene is when he's just like, I wish I had my board with me, just so I could wax it every once in a while. Which I thought was really funny. Dan O'Bannon's acting, I think, is one of the kind of weaker aspects of the film. There are moments where he's good-ish, but, for the most part, it's like, this guy ain't an actor, I thought the twist at the end where the commander who previously had died because of a malfunctioning seat, they've kind of kept him alive in a kind of cryogenic chamber, frozen, was like a real haunting kind of visual and idea, and the way that his voice was very slowly coming out in kind of a fuzz, and it was almost like you had to kind of tune in on a radio to hear what he was saying, and to put that kind of a device into the film where you have a character who you can't hear very well, he's slow to respond, and it's a situation where speed is of the essence and the utmost importance. So I thought the tension building up to the final climax of the film, where the bomb is jammed and is about to self-destruct, and they can't convince the bomb to turn itself off, which again was really funny. And then the final fight of the film is Doolittle, I believe, basically talking philosophy with this bomb. He goes outside the ship and is just like, why do you believe in life? Why do you believe that you exist? And the bomb's like, well, I think therefore I am. It's a really funny film. I think it drags a bit for me, and some of the limitations of the production design, it feels very cheap. And as a result, I find it difficult to let my imagination build that as an existing space in my head. I'm just looking like, yeah, that's like a really cheap corridor. But there are moments in this that I thought were good visually, as far as like some of the space stuff. Obviously, it doesn't look crisp and kind of as clean and beautiful as you'd see in other science fiction films of the period before this and after it. But really nice kind of just like the planets and things like that, and some of the nebulas, they looked really nice. And also the music done by John Carpenter, who, famously has done music for most of his films, or a lot of them anyway. And this was his first film that he directed and produced and wrote and also did the music on. And there's some really good pieces, actually. There's one when the alien sequence where he's kind of like looking around the corridors and stuff, and there's kind of a tension-y kind of tune, and that felt like kind of classic Carpenter score right there, which I really liked. And there's other stuff where they're kind of listening to like country music at the beginning, which was a lot of fun. And as I showed you with that clip, the hand and the knife scene, which you see in Aliens, so kind of a weird connection there. Anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can go into. I want to try and keep my thoughts on each film to like 10 minutes or so, much like we've been trying to do in the past few years of the 24-hour movie marathon. And I'll give myself maybe 2 or 3 Ridley Scott's no, if I really feel like I want to continue talking about a film. But yeah, that's Dark Star. Not a great film. not even a really good film, just an okay film. You really have to judge it on its own terms. I think you can't go in expecting something like Alien, and you can really see actually a little bit of a through line there to Alien. Not much, but you can see kind of the germs of certain ideas, the computer voice, the female voice that's ringing out throughout the ship. I mean, I don't know, maybe that was a trope of science fiction before that. I have no idea, but there are elements that feel alien-esque at times. So, Dark Star, I really enjoyed. There's a documentary called Let There Be Light: The Odyssey of Dark Star, an extended version. A couple of interviews, an audio commentary with a super fan. Don't think I'm really interested in that, a commentary with a fan. And then the written intro, which we saw, and I think a trivia track perhaps as well. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was okay, and certainly really what I expected. And it made me laugh a few times, and it made me really laugh at the end. Like the laugh I gave at the end of this film is louder than I laugh at most modern comedies. It was just such a ridiculous gag to end the film on, and kind of perfect for what they were trying to say with this film, which was not all that much really. It's just a bit of a laugh, It's a bit. It felt like the kind of boys making a movie, where it's just let's make a movie, let's have a good time, let's just have it be ridiculous, and we'll throw in elements of science fiction that we love. I'm assuming they must have been science fiction fans. And yeah, I think it's for what it is, it's successful, I think. But obviously it didn't do too well, and has since become somewhat of a cult classic.